Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. It's September 12th, 2020. And we're reading Philosophy Discussion with Srila Prabhupada. And this is Prabhupada speaking about David Hume, the British philosopher. Shamasundar says, today we are discussing philosopher David Hume. He is probably the most famous of the British philosophers. He was very skeptical about achieving certain knowledge, so he came to the conclusion that the only knowledge we can possess is a mere sequence of ideas, none of which can be proved to be true. In other words, we can only derive any knowledge from our senses, but even that knowledge is mere assumption. Prabhupada, yes, we say also, because our senses are imperfect, so there is no possibility of achieving perfect knowledge by sense exercise. It is not possible. That is our philosophy. Shamasundar, he says there is no other source of knowledge except the senses. Prabhupada, no, we don't agree. Therefore, it is called Avan, Manasa, Gochara, Hokshaja. There are so many names. The senses are imperfect. They cannot reach. Just like we cannot know what is there in the sun, but a geologist or astronomer, he can say, one who has studied. Therefore, our process of knowledge is to take from the authorities. That is perfect. Our senses cannot read, that is a fact. But it is not that without senses, no knowledge can be. No, we receive by senses, but from superior authority, one who knows, that is perfect knowledge. According to him, there is no possibility of having perfect knowledge. Shamasundar, yes. Prabhupada, that is a skeptic. Shamasundar, yes. He says that all that we are, all that we know is merely ideas, a sequence of ideas. Prabhupada, but behind the ideas, there must be some fact. Otherwise, how we get the ideas? Shamasundar, he separates fact from idea. For instance, I may think this table is red, but it is actually brown, so my idea is incorrect. Prabhupada, your idea may be, but actually it has got a color, either red or yellow. So if you have eye disease, you cannot see actually. But one whose eyes are not diseased, he can see whether it is yellow or red. Just like sometimes glaucoma. You see the moon as two moons, but actually there is one moon. But due to your eye disease, you see two moons. But one who is not diseased, he sees one moon. Therefore, we have to take knowledge from a person who is not diseased. Not that because my eyes are diseased, I cannot see things right way. I shall say, oh, there is no possibility of having right knowledge. That is not correct. Shamasundar. In fact, he calls the soul a bundle of perceptions, that it is nothing but a set or sequence of ideas. This is Prabhupada discussing with Shamasundar, the philosopher David Hume. Okay. David Hume, British philosopher from the 1700s. Yes. Prabhupada, but as soon as he says ideas, there must be some concrete things. Shamasundar, yes, he admits that the external world is full of concrete things, but he thinks that we are also one of those things because we are only a bundle of perceptions. Our consciousness is only made up of our observations of material nature. Prabhupada, yes, so far direct perception is concerned, it is likely, but indirect perception taken from authorities, that is different. Shamasundar, he distrusts any kind of authority and says that the only kind of things that we can know for sure are mathematical proofs and immediate sense perception. Like we can perceive that there is time and there is space, like that. That is the only knowledge he will admit. Prabhupada, and beyond the time and space? Shamasundar, we can't know anything. Prabhupada, you cannot, but there is a process. You cannot know, that does not mean beyond the mind is relative time and perception. Just like a small insect, he takes birth in the evening. And from evening to morning, his birth, his marriage, his begetting children, everything is done. And in the morning, he dies. There are many insects. They are called Diwali Pakali. At night, they will throng together in India. So for this insect, it is very difficult to understand that there is another animal which is called man, who has got this duration of his lifetime period in only 12 hours of his life. But the insect cannot go beyond that. Just like when we hear from Bhagavad Gita that Brahma lives such and such, we disbelieve sometimes. But everything is relative. With your relative body, your duration of life, your knowledge, your perception, everything is relative. So you are a teeny human being. What is impossible for you is not impossible for others. He is talking from the relative platform. Shyamasundar, yes, he believes there is only relativity. He doesn't think there's anything absolute. Prabhupada, relativity. He does not believe that there are other things. But as soon as one says relative, the opposite word is absolute. Otherwise, wherefrom we take this word relative? Shyamasundar. Well, his idea is that things only exist in relation with each other. Prabhupada, yes. Then what is the supreme relative? Shyamasundar. He doesn't admit any supreme. Prabhupada, his knowledge is imperfect. So Hume is from the 1700s, which is like the middle of the modernist era, enlightenment, like that. And that's where like the whole kind of modern empirical science is becoming strong and popular, both practically and with philosophical basis. And the idea is like different forms of positivism or logical positivism, where the idea is, yes, through our senses and inferential process with the mind, we come to knowledge. Like that. So, of course, when we get into the 20th century, especially the latter half of the 20th century, there's lots of skepticism about that. And then that becomes kind of like postmodernism. So this is...
So that would have been the time when they were, the thinkers were kind of like pulling away from religion and starting to think on
yes.
Their stuff.
Yes, right.
And he would be like kind of like one of the poster thinkers of that time.
Yes, well, it's interesting. Yes, so for sure. So he's clearly rejecting as any sort of source of knowledge traditional religious thinking like the Pope or things like that. So he's rejecting that, which is typical of modernists of his time and after. Like after him, you get modernists like Marx and Freud and Darwin. That's after this. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is, so he's saying that even knowledge collected through the senses, we can't be sure about either. So he's sort of foreshadowing, like 200, 250 years later, the postmodernists, which is characterized by an incredulity towards the possibility of any foundations for knowledge. So he's not just cynical about traditional religious authority, but he's also cynical even about the basis of the epistemology of what's becoming the scientific method. So he's kind of foreshadowing what's going to get stronger and stronger into the 1900s and 2000s. So yes, right. So he's
rejecting the blind faith,
right,
which is probably quite prominent in the religions at that time.
Yeah.
And that's reflecting in his not wanting to accept a source of knowledge outside of the senses or time,
right,
his own intelligence. But then he's also doing this kind of like intellectual analysis of things and seeing the faultiness in that. And that's
yes,
what you're saying is foreshadowing that in this aspect, how it will become more and more clear.
yes. True. More and more nihilistic. Yes. So Prabhupada, of course, agrees with him. Yes, the senses are imperfect. They are a fallible means of knowledge. Senses, mind, inferential method, ascending method. Yes, it is imperfect, so we agree. But then Hume's kind of beginning to go to. So there's really there's no source of absolute knowledge. Because what was going on in the name of religion had become so corrupt. And then he's understanding the senses and mind are imperfect. So he doesn't have actual data, actual parampara.
Yeah, there was one guy I met from my friends. He was kind of in the study. I guess he had some dream before where, there is some past life memory, I think. His description of it was that my sense was that he was like basically having a memory as being like a demigod or some higher being like that from a previous life. And but somehow I don't know. He got a sense of his scope of perception.
Yes.
But then he came up with the phrase saying something like there is no absolute truth.
Right.
And so that's naturally the question just came to my mind. What came to me like, well, how could you ever find peace of mind?
Yeah.
Any absolute knowledge.
It's a recipe for insanity.
Pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and then now, now we see this like hyper postmodernism flaring up with these different groups that are going out and they're just screaming out at each other. There's not really any sense in their arguments.
Yeah.
They're not willing to have like sit and have conversations. It's just this.
It's like destroy everything, bring everything down.
Yeah.
Right. So make everything equal by making it void and nothing, meaningless. Yeah.
You're gonna say sorry.
Well, again, not just like, and then that declaration certainly begs the question. There is no absolute truth. Are you sure? Yeah. Are you absolutely sure? Then it really becomes a formula for insanity because it's a paradox. It's a contradiction.
Yeah. They're absolutely accepting contradiction as the basis of their way of processing everything.
Yes. Yeah, and like you say, then we can see it rampant in the streets. Fortunately, not in Alachua, as far as I can see so far. But because the idea is that there is no hierarchy of values. There's no hierarchy of principles, and everything should be deconstructed. Everything's meaningless. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of get this. I don't know that much about the left and the right, but it seems like one side does have themselves together a little bit more, and the other side with these ones that are going out and wanting to tear down with America. I guess the patriots, they still have some little bit of structure there.
Some modernism. Yeah, there's some tinges of modernism.
Yeah.
Modernism is like structure, and the postmodernism is like deconstruct.
Yeah. I can see that there is a little bit more.
Yeah.
They want to tear down the system, the history, the culture.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I can relate to in a sense because then that's what the way that I looked at it when I was younger. I still have this impulse, that it's basically kind of like these the systems that are in place. They still have some system there.
Yeah.
But it's being mostly misused. So then I equated that structure with that destruction,
with corruption, exploitation.
Yeah. People being able to kind of like bring the power together and work together to impose on other people.
Consolidate their power to exploit others.
Yeah.
So let's tear down power structures.
Completely, yeah.
Right. Power structures, tear down knowledge structures.
Yeah, and I did become quite like I had different issues with my mind and stuff like that, but definitely that was a time when I would say I felt the most crazy after they went to like actually like I mean I had fear and battle with paranoia and all that stuff, but I even in those times I didn't feel like I was really, I'd say, crazy. But yeah, the times when I was thinking about then going into Iraq and doing all these things, getting to the revolutionary, the whole friends and stuff like that. And yeah, really like I can see it in these people. It's like your mind and emotions just like fire, you know, and you just start like flailing, you know, attacking whatever's around.
But sort of a violent reactivity.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you probably heard me quote the valedictorian at Harvard. Have you heard that quote?
I remember you quoting it, but I don't
Okay. Well, it relates to this. So I read it in a book by Bela et al. Called The Great Society. And so a valedictorian at Harvard, maybe in the 80s somewhere. He started his speech saying, ladies and gentlemen, there's one experience that all of us graduates have had at this fine institution of higher learning. And that experience, ladies and gentlemen, in one word, is confusion. Then he goes on to say, the freedom of our day is the freedom to devote ourselves to any values that we choose, on the mere condition that we don't believe them to be true. So that's
on the mere condition that we don't believe them
to be true. Yeah, that's it's the formula for insanity. That's what he's pointing to. So it's very brilliant words, in my opinion. It's saying like that freedom. No, we're not. No one's imposing anything. You can believe whatever you want to believe, as long as you don't really believe that it's true. As long as you accept that ultimately the truth is relative nihilism, and everything is actually reduces to nothing and is meaningless. If you actually believe them, if you actually believe a set of morals, values, religious beliefs to be true, then you're some sort of unsophisticated, primitive moron or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mentality about insidious, like, yeah, I'm going around yelling my opinion at people is something that I actually don't believe. Yeah. And he was speaking at what university?
Harvard.
Oh, Harvard.
Like,
and he was getting that there.
Yeah, he was like the top student of the whole graduating class in Harvard. So I would imagine it's required quite a lot of boldness and courage to speak there.
Yeah.
Because the institutions of higher learning, especially the top institutions of higher learning, they are really the bastion. They are the home and the cradle of this kind of nihilistic solipsism, of this absolute relativism, like that, of postmodernism.
Yeah. So I guess then that comes back to what Prabhupada said, that he was at some university, MIT or IIT.
Prabhupada spoke at MIT in Massachusetts.
You have all these courses, and you don't have even one course on what is, who are you, who am I, what is the soul?
Yeah. What is the soul? One course on self-realization. Yeah, so that's it. So in other words, like there's good reason to reject corrupt, authority, whether it's in the name of the church or the government. And there's good reason to be skeptical about the scientific method, even like if we go into the 20th century, kind of like when the philosophers were starting to look at, okay, what's the actual result of this positivist scientific, the actual result is things like the Holocaust and gas chambers and nuclear bombs. So is this really working? Is this really working for humanity? So we said, like, no, this is, so there's good reason to have skepticism. And then what Prabhupada's providing, representing Srila Vyasadeva and Sri Krishna, is, yes, is really an integration, a perfection, a completion of all these approaches to knowledge. A source of authority that's infallible and that is not subject to the defects of human frailties, human senses, and that can be scientifically verified. If we follow the process, can be scientifically verified. All the assertions. We don't need to rely on just believe and give your 10% tithe or like that. No, we can try the process, and we can directly experience it. We can directly experience these truths, and so it's a scientific process that confirms truly infallible knowledge descending from perfect authority.
Yeah, which is the actual scientific process. What he's talking about is not the scientific process, because it's not based on anything. And so the scientific, and that's what I noticed they do too. They separate the actual scientific process from science.
Right.
Science is just like this body of agreed conclusions.
It's become a dogmatic institution.
Yeah. That doesn't actually, but within those things, it seems like you're trying to apply the scientific method of experimentation and stuff, but it's all based on nothing. It's not based on a grounded reality. Yeah. Versus you're saying that.
And then it becomes like the new religion.
Yeah.
This dogmatism. If someone is not agreeing with the herd mentality in the name of science, then they're vilified and demonized and like that.
So that's what dogma means, is that it's just its own. They only accept only their own body of teachings and nothing outside of that. Is that what dogma is?
Right. And if you want to be part of the club, you need to accept it and don't ask questions. Yeah. All right, let's read a bit more. Okay, so Shyamasundar says, he says, just like a cherry, say a fruit, Prabhupada, in logic there is relative study, and at the end of all relative truth there is absolute truth, the summum bonum. So he has no idea of the summum bonum or the substance. Shyamasundar, no, he denies any substance. He says, just like a cherry or a fruit, it has certain sensory qualities such as sweetness, color, like that. He says that we are just like that, humans. We have certain sensory qualities. We are made up of a series of mental activities or a complex of ideas. But this is all we are. Prabhupada, no, we have got senses also. The color is only what is called sensory qualities. It is a quality, but to appreciate that quality, we have the senses. An inert object, it has got the quality, but living entity, it has the senses to appreciate the quality. Shyamasundar. But he says, these senses are only a bundle of perceptions, of ideas. Prabhupada. Whatever it may be, the living entity is superior to the inert matter. In Sanskrit language, they are called tanmatra. They are created for the sense. They are sense objects. I have got senses, I must appreciate something. That something is that quality or sensory quality. I have eyes, I must see something. So therefore there is color, there is beauty. Shyamasundar. He postulates three laws whereby perceptions are associated or connected with one another. He says, first of all, there is the principle of resemblance. For example, I see a picture and it impels me to think of the original of that picture. The second principle is the principle of contiguity. If I mention a room in a building, this impels me to think of other rooms in other buildings. And the third principle is the principle of cause and effect. Just like if I think about a wound, I automatically think of pain. So in these three ways, he thinks that our whole being is made up of this stream of ideas, association of ideas. One idea follows another perpetually. Prabhupada. That is called relative world. That is the meaning of relative world. You cannot understand what is father without a son. You cannot understand son without a father. You cannot understand husband without a wife. This world is like that. It is called relative world. Shama Sundar. He thinks that is what our being is. It is simply ideas. From our birth to our death, we simply are made up of a bundle of perceptions and ideas. Simply that, nothing more. Prabhupada, beyond this idea, Shyamasundar, he denies the existence of any ultimate reality, only the phenomena of senses. Prabhupada, so where from do these phenomena come unless there is noumena? Shyamasundar, well, he says that it is possible that all this existed since eternity and there was no cause. It's possible that there is no cause, that it's just existed. Prabhupada, what about the manifestation, past, present, and future? Shyamasundar, he says that this may be an external existence. He says that this may be an eternal existence of things, but there may not be any cause. Prabhupada, then why death takes place if there is no cause? Shyamasundar, it's just like any machine which is born and dies. Prabhupada, when you say machine, machine is made by somebody. You cannot compare it to a machine. A machine is created by somebody. There is beginning of the machine. Shyamasundar, we're just like the seasons, they come and go. So Prabhupada uses this language. So where from do these phenomena come unless there is noumena? That's the philosophical language Prabhupada uses, like in the second verse of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Ram teham saviginam idam bhakshyami sheshatayaj getpan nehupuronyaj getavyameva shish yate. He says to Arjuna, now I shall declare to you this knowledge, both phenomenal and noumenal, after knowing which there shall remain nothing further to be known. And I think that's pretty much the exact quote. Yes. So, yes, I guess the Prabhupada uses this phenomenal and noumenal. Yeah. So
So that means that when he's saying phenomenal and noumenal, that he's addressing the aspects of duality, but also the absolute.
yeah, phenomenal is like this world, what we can perceive with our senses. So Prabhupada's saying, in response to Hume's concept, he's saying, yes, that where from do these phenomena come unless there is noumena? So noumena means that which is beyond sense perception. It's the English version of adhokshaya. It's transcendental. So that, yeah, so just like here's a phenomenal chair, we can perceive it. It's a phenomenon we can perceive with our senses. But then Prabhupada's indicating, so there must be an original chair, a noumenal chair, that's beyond our sense perception. We're persons with personality. This is phenomenal. But then there's noumena. The original source of everything is spirit. So there's spiritual flute, spiritual rivers, spiritual trees, spiritual personality, spiritual friendship, spiritual relationship, spiritual sky. So Prabhupada's indicating everything comes from the noumena. Yeah, so the text 2 of chapter 7 is, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and noumenal, by knowing which there shall remain nothing further to be known. So then Krishna goes on and he explains about there's the material energy, Bhumi, earth, one, the lower body, Kamana, Vidya, Vacha, Ahankara, Tiyami, Bina, Prakriti, Ashtata, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, and then operating Tvanya, Prakriti, Vidya, Kram, Jiva, Bhuta, Mahabharata, Yaya, he says, and then there's a noumenal energy. There's another energy in this world, the spirit soul. And this whole world exists because of the spirit soul. Right? These bodies exist, they're like magnets around the spirit soul. We get a particular combination of matter because of the desire of the numinous soul. The soul is ultimately transcendental. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just taking the emphasis off of these, emphasizing the phenomenal, and Prabhupada just bringing things to the noumenal,
Yeah.
the spiritual.
Yeah. Ultimate soul.
Absolute knowledge.
Right. Yeah. Because Hume is saying, well, maybe there is no cause. So that's the Prabhupada giving completion to the knowledge system.
Yeah. 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 With the example of the machine. The machine is the kind of like the temporary manifestation of it. And there is a person who created that machine.
Yeah, Prabhupada.
So outside of the reference of the machine.
Nice, yeah. Nicely put. Yeah, Prabhupada, he goes there so much because we think, oh, that's a great analogy with the machine. But no, okay, if you're going to use the metaphor of the machine, every machine has a creator of the machine who's outside the machine. This computer is a machine. And the designer, the creator of the computer is not in the machine, not part of the machine, separate from it. So if you want to use the analogy of machine, then you're sort of acknowledging a maker of the machine. So Prabhupada is like, it's very simple, but Prabhupada's just shining the light on, kind of where these big brain philosophers, where they get some valid knowledge and where they're confused about very simple things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I was noticing also saying like Krishna saying once you realize this knowledge, there's no further knowledge to know, because then it's like that, and the mind is like that in the scientific community, that they just keep it's always something new, always something different, always something different. So it's not it's not coming to a final conclusion.
Right. Even what we thought we knew 10 years ago, now we see actually we were in ignorance. That's kind of how that process of relative knowledge unfolds. So Prabhupada, in response to the statement about seasons, Prabhupada says, yes, they again come. So what is this, Shyamasundar? This may be an eternally existing fact which has no cause or no creator. This is his idea. Prabhupada, there is no creator. Shyamasundar, no creator. He says, however, that if we prefer, we can say that there is a creator if we like to. In other words, he bases everything on this idea that you can do what you like to do. Prabhupada, so that he can go on talking whatever he likes. Laughter. All nonsense. All he wants is that license. You can go on talking all nonsense. I can go on talking all nonsense. You are right. I am right. Everything is right. Yatamata, tatapata, yatamata. As many opinions there are, so many. Also, so it does not apply in legal sense. Just like the same example that I give always, keep to the right. And if somebody says, my opinion is keep to the left. But as soon as he does it, he is arrested. Shyamasundar. We'll discuss that in a minute or two, but he divided human understanding into two classes. The first class is the relationship among ideas. Just as mathematical compositions, they are true and certain, whether or not the things they refer to exist in nature. Just like 2 plus 2 equals 4. This is a relationship among ideas. And the second, relationship among facts. He says that these cannot be proved by reasoning. They are merely assumed on the basis of sense experience. For example, that sun will rise tomorrow. This is a relationship among facts, but it is merely an assumption based upon our sense experience. But it's possible to imagine that the world will end or the sun may not rise. So it's only an assumption that the sun will rise. So this world of facts that we see, we can only assume that they will act in certain ways. There is probability, but there is no certainty. Prabhupada. That is already discussed. Why it is so, probability. Who takes it? Who makes it not possible? How it happens. Sun is rising and sun may not rise. Stop. How it is, accidentally or by somebody's will. Shamasundar. He would say that it's accidental. Prabhupada. That is nonsense. Nothing is accidental. Everything is symmetrical. Therefore, we have to admit that supreme direction, and that is Krishna, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Under my direction, everything is going on. The sun is rising on his direction, and when he orders, the sun will not rise. But it is not accidental. Shamasundar.
Yeah, so it says everything is symmetrical. So
Yeah.
he's using that as a very basic example of intelligent design.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Right. Yes.
Before he goes into explaining about Krishna, quoting Krishna.
Right. Yes. I think that's a nice description of what Prabhupada is succinctly doing. Shamasundar, representing Hume, says, he says that there is no such thing as a cause and effect relationship, just like, for example, we associate friction with heat, but he says that it's a mistake to assume that friction causes heat or possesses any power which must inevitably produce heat. He says that it is a mere repetition of two incidents so that the effect habitually attends the cause, but it is not necessarily a consequence of it. So the fact that I rub my hands together and there is heat produced, I am used to assuming that the friction causes heat, but he says that it is not necessarily so. Whenever there is friction, there is heat, but that is only because they are associated with each other, not that one causes the other. Prabhupada, then how are they associated? Shamasundar, that one habitually attends the other, but not necessarily as a consequence of it. Prabhupada, but who made this law? As soon as they associate, immediately after friction, there is heat. So there is a systematic law. The association may be accidental, but as soon as there is friction between two associates, the law is there must be heat. So there is systematic law. Either you rub the hands or I rub the hands. The law is that heat must be there, either in your hands or in my hands. That is law. Right. So Prabhupada's saying, oh, you call it association, you call it cause and effect. But there's clearly some systematic arrangement. There's like a machine happening. So yeah, so who's the lawmaker? Who's the machine maker? Shamasundar, his idea is that this law is not ultimate reality, that it is a mere probability. Prabhupada says, but it is a physical law, and he says that the sequence of the law may be different. So that is possible also because law means made by some person, somebody. So if he likes, he can change the law, just like if the legislator assembles and some law is passed today, next day or next month or next year, this law is nullified. So that Supreme Legislative Council is responsible for this lawmaking. Similarly, there is a supreme will who makes this law and who can nullify this law. So we have to come to the supreme will. You cannot change or you cannot make any new law. If you think that by friction of hands, there may not be any heat producing effect, that you cannot do. Therefore, you are also under the supreme will. He has given you a chance to talk all nonsense, but he can stop immediately. Your tongue in you will be a dead body, is it not? He is talking all nonsense, but if the supreme will desires, he'll stop immediately, his tongue moving, and he'll be considered a dead body, all philosophy finished. But he cannot stop it. Therefore, the supreme will is the ultimate cause of all causes. Shamasundar. He says that morality consists of values which the individual formulates for himself as a matter of personal opinion. In other words, I can do whatever my conscience dictates. Prabhupada. So another man can also say what my conscience dictates. So there is a difference, Shamasundar. But in society, moral values are based upon the opinion of the whole society. In other words, my moral values are relative to public opinion. Prabhupada. When the majority opinion is something, you have to accept it. That is democracy. Shamasundar. But still, he says it's up to the individual whether to accept or reject it. This is where you were talking about the left side of the road and the right side of the road, that even though the law is there as agreed upon by society, still it's up to me whether I want to follow it or not. It's a matter of my personal opinion. Prabhupada, if you don't follow, then you'll be punished. That will be the effect. You'll be punished. Therefore, the conclusion is that your independent thinking is not absolute. It is also relative. Shamasundar. He says that logic or reason don't determine morality, but sentiment determines morality. How I feel, that's how I should act. Prabhupada, or in other words, what is accepted by the supreme will, that is morality. You cannot decide what is morality. The supreme will decides whether it is morality or immorality. Shamasundar. According to Hume, it's my sentiment that decides. How I feel at the moment, that's how I should act. It's my personal opinion. Prabhupada. But your personal opinion sometimes does not meet with approval. So if you are satisfied with your personal opinion, but if it is not approved by others, then you are in the fool's paradise, that's all. Shamasundar. So he says that the remedy for this is social, that we should try to change the laws of the state or change the opinion of the state to accept a certain type of morality. If I think something is right and the state says it's wrong, then I should act through politics to change it. Prabhupada, he agrees to surrender to the supreme state. So if the supreme state sanctions, it is morality, is it not that? Shamasundar, yes, public opinion. Prabhupada, but anyway, it goes to somebody, public opinion. But this public opinion is not final. Therefore, above the public opinion, there is the supreme will of Krishna. That should be the final to sanction morality or immorality. Shamasundar. He says that the moral sentiments which are approved by society enhance the social good, whereas immoral attitudes are egoistic and antisocial. So that a society will always approve of a certain set of moral values, and then the individual living in the society must either accept or reject them. And if he rejects them, then he must act through politics, through the social body, to try to change their attitude, their opinion. Prabhupada. Therefore, it depends on that social body, which is authority. So ultimately, we have to depend on the authority for all sanctions. So our proposition is that the supreme authority is Krishna. So whatever he sanctions, that is morality. Whatever he does not sanction, that is immorality. Just like Arjuna was thinking to become non-violent, not to fight is good. But Krishna said, now you fight. So fight became good. So ultimately it depends on Krishna's will. What is morality? What is immorality? What is good? What is bad? Therefore, our duty is, instead of depending on social body or political, and there's a break in the tape, and Prabhupada continues.
So that's when it gets confusing, because Arjuna, well, I'm not, I suppose that that's not such a good example, but the example of Maharaj
Yudhisthira.
Yudhisthira, the way he was not supposed to lie, that's
Right.
like what Arjuna is saying is not really based on the Vedas, not but what Yudhisthira is saying is based on the Vedas. So that's when it gets to be confusing how apply these things in one's life.
Okay, yeah. Well, then Vedanta Vedanta Evacham. The goal of all the Vedas is Krishna. The goal of all the Vedas, including the morality, the Dharma, Varnashram, it's to please Krishna. That's why, yes, Yudhishthira, he was so Vedic and Dharmic. But in that one element of the pastime, he was, he wasn't fully conscious of what's the goal of all the Veda and all the Dharma. And that's to please Krishna.
Yeah, but then even him, Krishna is asking directly, face to face, you know, so it's not wouldn't be as confusing, you know.
Well,
as trying to apply things now, you know.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we don't want to. So because in that part of the pastime, Maharaj Yudhishthira, he was attached to being dharmic at the expense of attached to serving the goal of all dharma. That was part of the lesson. Now, we don't want to misapply such a pastime that, like, oh, okay, if it's for Krishna, I can lie. And then we're just kind of whimsical about it. I mean, that was a very particular situation like that. Still, the principle is there that the principle is there that the ultimate goal of all dharma, including truthfulness, is to serve God, serve Krishna with love and devotion. And even so that so it's okay to lie. Well, anyone, and no, not everyone, but most any philosopher, most any thinking person will agree that there's some time let's call it in a surface way, it's okay to not be truthful, to serve higher truth. We don't want to misapply that. We don't want to whimsically use that to serve our frivolous ego. But just like, even if we take God out of the picture, let's say we're walking along and we just turn the corner in the field and we see 3 or 4 dead human bodies, and then there's a woman with her baby running, and she goes, "He's going to kill me next. He's going to kill me next." And yes, he's killing my whole family. And then she goes down the forest trail that way. And then 30 seconds later, the guy with the knife comes. And he says, "Which way did the woman with the child go?" So we can go, "Well, I wouldn't be a good person. She went down the forest trail right there." You might say, "She went the other way. She went, I don't know," or whatever. So, even if we take God out of it, most everyone can understand that, let's call it a superfluous representation of truth isn't always the highest way to serve truth and higher principle, even if we take transcendence out. Okay. Yeah. Okay, we check time. All right, so maybe we'll read another paragraph or so. All right, Shyamasundar says, he says that there is no absolute morality, that everything is relative. Prabhupada says, yes, we say also, if it is sanctioned by Krishna, then it is morality. Otherwise, the same morality may be immorality. Just like Yudhishthira was asked by Krishna to speak lie. Prabhupada goes exactly there. Yeah. Just like Yudhishthira was asked by Krishna to speak lie. Go to Dronacharya and inform him that your son is dead. Because Dronacharya had a benediction that unless he was shocked by the dead limbs of his son, he would not die. So he had to be shocked. but he would not believe anybody except King Yudhisthira, because he was known as very honest and truthful. Therefore, Krishna employed this service that you go. Maharaj Yudhisthira, he said, oh, how can I tell a lie? So this is immorality. Krishna is ordering, and he is saying that, how can I say lie? This is immorality. He is disobeying the order of Krishna. But Arjuna, he rejected all morality and immorality. He accepted Krishna's order. That is morality. He was personally thinking that if I kill my brother's cousins, this, that, so many things, but because he was a pure devotee of Krishna, when he understood Krishna wants it, he said, yes, this is morality. That is the fact. When your actions are approved by the supreme authority, that is morality. Mm. Mm. If it is not approved by the supreme authority, that is immorality. Therefore, so-called morality, immorality has no fixed position. When it is approved by Krishna, it is morality. Even so-called immorality would be morality, and so-called morality would be immorality. Mm. 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 That we practically see. The same example as I gave you, that a soldier killing so many human beings, he is awarded, and it is great. He does what he likes, then it becomes chaos. Shamasundra, that's what has happened. Prabhupada, there must be some authority. Shamasundra, he says the only authority is public opinion, and it changes. Prabhupada, that's all right, still is authority. Public opinion, he says, or without public opinion, the king or royalty, there must be some authority to guide them. Otherwise, there will be chaos. And Prabhupada, there's going to be authority. So we have Krishna with the Vedas, and ultimately Krishna. Krishna's Parampara. When Prabhupada went to Russia, when he was talking about the communists, he would say, okay, so they have a big statue of Lenin. Of course, now, since Prabhupada departed, the whole statue of Lenin is toppled. But at that time, so you have Lenin, right? So you worship, you follow Lenin, and we follow Krishna. So the principle of authority is there.
Yeah. I heard before that Jagannath, there's lower portion of Jagannath temple that stays even through the dissolution of the universe.
Have you heard that? Okay.
I'm just trying to show them something interesting, I guess.
Okay. Interesting.
It doesn't get this road.
All right. Well, yeah, well, these ancient Vedic temples, they're really timeless. Archaeologists can try to put a date on many of them, but they really don't know. Yeah, they really don't know. So Krishna can do that. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.